Alright, so in all honesty, I pretty much kind of did copy and paste that video that's on the Intro to the Endocrine System from a video I did in Anatomy and Physiology 1. So, same teacher, obviously, and it's pretty much the same material minus some points, so just ignore the points you really don't need to know. But essentially, it went over on the endocrine system pretty well, so I just copy and paste it because I'm lazy. But the endocrine system is a way that the body communicates, widespread. It's not very slow, but it's widespread effects that act for a very long time. And with these things, you can do many things, and this test is mostly focusing on controlling blood glucose. So controlling your glucose level. Actually, most of it is controlling your glucose level. And giving your body energy. Giving your body energy for exercise. Or actually, let's just say giving your body energy, which actually is synonymous with glucose. So it goes pretty well. But this whole thing is really about blood glucose and giving energy, blah, blah, blah. Now, the ways that, we'll just go right into question 2 about the ways that cells communicate. Now, the main way is through the endocrine system. The way the endocrine system works is your brain sends a signal, which goes to your pituitary gland, which is one of the glands in the endocrine system, and this signal causes the pituitary gland to release a certain hormone. This hormone goes throughout the body and binds to a cell, causes a certain effect. Bam, you have your endocrine response. Now, that's a very simplified version of it. Now, in actuality, there's there's millions of hormones circulating your bloodstream in any given second. Your body is saturated with little hormone dudes circling your bloodstream. So you have your bloodstream, or that's not your bloodstream. Say you have your body, you have a little dude, he's happy because he has all these hormones. And he has a mismatched shoulder, big ass arm, another arm, small arm. It's pretty fat. Okay, so say you have this dude. It's a little messed up. Okay, so say you have this guy. Now he doesn't just have little hormone going, finding this hormone causing him to pee or whatever. He has thousands and millions and billions and trillions and gazillions of hormones circling his bloodstream at any given seconds. Now, what is causing these hormones to bind to its cell that it has to affect and not bind to, these are his hormones doing everything. Now, what is causing, and he has a hormone in his brain, what is causing these hormones to bind to a specific cell that it has to affect? Are these hormones smart enough to know I had to only bind to a kidney cell, I can only bind to a thyroid cell or a liver cell? What affects what they bind to? Unfortunately, your body's smarter than this. Every cell has certain receptors on it. Certain receptors. And these hormones go throughout the body. They look for its specific receptor. Each receptor is specific to a certain hormone, and it binds to the receptor. So let's say you have a little hormone dude, he finds this receptor. He's like, oh, I like this receptor. He likes the receptor, he binds to it. This receptor, so he binds to the receptor. Now, not every cell has a certain receptor. It only binds to what it needs to. So just kind of like when a guy starts dating a girl, for an example. There's thousands of girls in the world. There's thousands of guys in the world. Not every girl is going to marry every single guy. They're only specific for, okay, now being very general here, but they're specific for a certain match. So they look for that certain match, and when they find its receptor, quote unquote, they bind to it and they marry it and they have kids and they're happy for life. So they're specific to one person. Let's just say that. So they're specific. The hormones are kind of like the same thing. They float around the body and they bind to a certain receptor, and that's the cell they act on, and they know this is how cells communicate. If the cell has its receptor, the hormone binds to it. If it doesn't have the receptor, the hormone does not bind to it. Hormone is not smart enough to know what it's binding to. It only binds to a receptor. So that's one way, receptor mediated. Actually, this is a big way in the body for everything, receptors. Now there's another guy it's called synaptic, which is another way the body communicates, and this is the nervous system. Not really going to go over it, but it's one of the ways the body communicates. This is acetylcholine, action potentials, all that stuff. Nervous system. So we have receptors in nervous system. Another way is contact. That's just one cell touching another cell, and it's related to receptors. One cell has a receptor, it binds to another cell with a receptor, and it causes a certain effect. So contact is just cells bumping into each other. But the biggest one is receptor. This is also called endocrine. because it's the same thing really. Endocrine response, endocrine contact, receptor, blah blah blah. Receptors, contact-dependent cells, that just bump into each other, they cause an effect. But it's mostly through receptors that cells activate. Now before this video reaches 10 minutes, I have 5 minutes left, we'll very quickly go over all the hormones that are of importance for this exam. Because there's many hormones in the body, but we only care about some of them. Well, actually we care about all of them, but for this exam, for exercise physiology and how they affect, remember, blood glucose, we only care about some of them. Now, biggest one, well, I won't say the biggest one, but we have insulin, glucagon. Insulin and glucagon, antagonists, they do opposite things. Everyone knows what insulin does, hopefully. Everyone knows what glucagon does. Then we have epinephrine. Epinephrine is also called adrenaline. It's a more common word that I'm sure everyone knows more of. Epinephrine is more the medical term. Now there's also norepinephrine, which I really don't know why. I really don't like it because norepinephrine is really not really a hormone. Norepinephrine is more of a neurotransmitter, but it's in there. So insulin and glucagon like each other, epinephrine and norepinephrine like each other. We have cortisol. We have thyroid hormone. Let's see what else we have, the major ones we care about. Well, we have growth hormone, which is GH. That's about it. Oh, we also have aldosterone, which doesn't really affect blood glucose. Now we'll very quickly say what all these hormones do, and then we'll talk about how exercise affects them, etc., because this whole class is about exercise. Now, insulin and glucagon. Insulin raises blood sugar. Everyone knows that. Insulin raises blood sugar. No, just kidding. Insulin lowers blood sugar. Everyone knows it but me, apparently. Insulin lowers blood sugar. It causes glucose to enter the cells, so you can do glycolysis and all that stuff. You all know this. Glucagon raises your blood sugar. When your blood sugar gets low enough, it raises your blood sugar. So these really control your blood levels, your blood glucose. So these are the most important ones that regulate your blood glucose at rest. Not really that, I'll say at rest, because they're not really that active when you're exercising. So these regulate your blood sugar. Insulin lowers it, glucagon raises it. We'll talk about the specifics later. Insulin and adrenaline, everyone knows what adrenaline does. You release adrenaline when you exercise, or you release adrenaline, you get crazy, you get full of energy. So it must raise your energy. So it raises your energy level. How do you raise energy? Energy, remember, is synonymous with glucose. So you raise your blood glucose level. And we'll talk about how it does that. Norepinephrine really does the same thing. Not a hormone. I don't know why it's included. But let's just say it's a hormone. Cortisol also increases your energy level / glucose. Now, make these words synonymous, energy and glucose. Cortisol is also called the stress hormone in the body. Whenever you're stressed, whether the stress is you're working out, you're stressing your muscles, endurance training, resistance training, whatever, it's still stress. Or if you're extremely stressed about, say, this exam, it's the same exact stress. Your body is not smart enough to know what is going on. Remember, your body only responds internally. So if you're releasing cortisol, your body thinks you're stressed. So you have the same effect. And we'll talk about the side effects of that, of why when you're stressed over a long period of time, it can actually lead to disease and you can actually get fat because of stress. And that's true. That's true. Thyroid kind of increases glucose. Let's just say it increases metabolism. Anything in the body that deals with metabolism, thyroid does it. Higher thyroid hormone, more thyroid in the body, more metabolism, the easier it is to lose weight, etc. Growth hormone, obviously, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to say what it does. You should know what growth hormone does. Now, aldosterone is very, 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 very important. It regulates fluid balance, which means you absorb water. Well, really, aldosterone makes you absorb sodium. We'll talk more about that. It's important. This is very, very important. It acts on the kidneys, so you absorb water. You control your blood sugar. You control your blood pressure. If you didn't regulate your blood pressure, if you didn't absorb water, you would die. So aldosterone is very important. So in this clusterfuck of words over here, we have most of these raise your blood sugar, raise your blood glucose, etc. Okay, so we'll see if we have anything more important to cover on all these exercises. We'll talk about where insulin and glucagon are released later. Let's talk about it right now. Insulin and glucagon. Insulin, this will be the last topic, and glucagon are both released from, everyone knows this by now, I'm sure you all heard of diabetes and all that, insulin and blood sugar, they're released from the pancreas. We'll talk about the specific cells later. Well, let's just use a fancy word. Insulin and glucagon are released from the islets of Langerhans, in case he uses fancy words, which I'm sure he does. Epinephrine, which will abbreviate norepi, or epi and norepi, are released from the gland called the adrenal medulla. There's two parts of the adrenal. You got the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. Do not miss this. These are released from the adrenal medulla. These are also called the catecholamines. I'll again go over that in some other videos. Catecholamines, same thing. The reason my cortisol is released from the adrenal, the adrenal cortex. Please do not miss these simple questions of where they're released. Adrenal cortex versus adrenal medulla. Okay, let's see what else. Thyroid hormone is released from the thyroid gland. Not even going to write that. Growth hormone is released really from anywhere in the body. It's not anywhere specific. Really, it's released from the pituitary, but it acts on everything in the body. And then we'll talk about aldosterone because that is, aldosterone is pretty complex. I'll talk about that in another video, but I actually have to take a second to review. So renin is released from the kidneys. Renin goes to the adrenal cortex. Okay, so aldosterone is released from the adrenal cortex. Is that correct? Yes, it's released from the adrenal cortex. So really the most important one is the adrenal medulla versus adrenal cortex. Remember these. Do not forget these. If you forget them and miss them in the test, I don't know how else to help you. But this is very simple of the hormones that you have to know for this test.